Hi everyone, before we go into the podcast, I just wanted to say thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I'm super grateful for your continued loyalty and support. If you could do me a quick favour, if you could give me a review on Apple Podcasts, it really helps the algorithm and it will help this podcast go up the lists. If there are any subjects or topics that you want me to cover, then please do reach out to me on DM on LinkedIn and I will do my best to find the best guest for that subject or topic. This is the Absolute Business Mindset podcast, created and hosted by Mark Hayward. This podcast will interview entrepreneurs, business owners and careerists. We will delve into their journey to success, key life milestones, and go deep into their area of expertise. Get ready to learn from other successes and failures. Today we have Lee Caraher, who is the president and CEO of Double Forte, which is a public relations, content marketing, and social media firm. Hello, Lee. How are you?
Mark, it's so good to see you. I am fine, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for joining me today. So we're going to talk about your business, your career, and how it goes. So let's start right at Double Forte. 18 odd years ago, what made you start that business initially?
Oh my gosh. Well, in 2001, I left a very large multinational media company thinking I would never do this PR agency thing again. Right after 9/11, I just had an epiphany, like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I decided I was going to take a year off of work. My kids were very young, et cetera, et cetera. I had money in the bank to take a year off, which I'd never done. And then I lived in California at the time, and we got, you probably don't have these where you are, but we got termites, which then required me to use most of our savings to save the house. And I drove my husband crazy. And my husband stays at home with our kids most of the time. And he said, you better go back to work because we're not going to make it unless you get back to work. Because I was literally glue gunning the whole house together.
Right.
And I was on the way to getting an internal job like I'd had before, my PR agency job at Sega of America. And my mother got sick. She was given 4 months to live in early 2002. And I decided that I could, at that time, there was no such thing as remote work. I wasn't not going to be allowed to be far away from my mom, to be with my mom and far away from my job. So I pulled myself out of the two jobs. I literally was a week away from having to choose between two big corporate jobs. And I told myself out because I'd either get fired or I'd have to quit. And I started my agency because I'm the bacon maker in our family. I bring home the money. And I decided, all right, well, I have to have a job that I can be in charge of, where I can be wherever I want to be. And that was what I knew how to do, which was run an agency. So I started Double Forte really out of necessity in 2002, not out of desire to be an entrepreneur. Okay. Not really thinking that here I am, I guess, what is it? Almost 19 years later, I guess. And now I'm not unemployable, frankly, because I really like being the boss.
Right, that's fantastic. And one of the things that I when I was doing the research on you, it sounded like you have sort of traditional forms of marketing, like PR in your sort of services, but also you do digital with social media marketing
and content.
I'm assuming that it started as a PR firm and sort of additional things that added further.
Correct. So we started before Twitter, right? So before Twitter, before Facebook was not a .edu. So it was very what you would consider traditional public relations, media relations, analyst relations kind of work. And then Twitter came on the field, then Facebook, and then everything else. I think I was user number 900-ish of LinkedIn. Wow. So that was a long time ago. And, actually didn't call us a PR firm when we started because I really don't like PR people, particularly as they were defined in 2001 in San Francisco.
What was the PR person then?
Oh, my gosh. The word flack, yeah?
Yeah.
so many people who don't know what the hell they're doing were in PR at the time. Also, some of the smartest people in the world, but people knew PR, particularly in Silicon Valley in 2000, 2001, it was all the dot-com boom and then the bust and a lot of, oh, my client. And that's, not my thing. So I called ourselves a communication firm. And then when social media really took off, really became, oh my gosh, it's going to happen. And it actually got us closer to the public in public relations.
Right.
It wasn't until 2009 after the great, recession, depression, whatever we want to call it, I realized that PR changed forever. And we were rising up the food chain, because now we were talking to the real public, not just the intermediaries, that I called us a PR firm. So once we, social media became ingrained, and the whole communication ecosystem changed so much that today we offer so many more services than we did at the beginning, but it's still the same job, right? The job is to represent our clients to the public and the people who influence the public in the most positive light forward. So the job is the function is the same, but the jobs we do are so different today than they were when we started.
So it's really interesting. Thank you for that definition, because some of my audience are pure sort of business people, entrepreneurs, but actually coming from your background. So it's all about communicating and how you represent brands and your representatives, your company, whatever it is.
Correct.
And that is done on from a brand point of view as well. So
absolutely.
You help build people's brands or brands into.
So we always start with, what is the goal? What's the business goal? Let's make sure we're all on the same, because you can do a lot. I'm sure you've all seen lots of PR, very flash and dance, a lot of party, that kind of stuff. And then it goes nowhere. It actually has no impact on the business. And I am not interested in that because it's money and it's time. And actually you can spend a bajillion hours and a bajillion dollars or pounds or euros or whatever it is, and actually not make a dent on the business in our world, because people think that the big things, flashy things, make a big difference. And sometimes they do, but they need to be strategic in that they advance the business, not just have a party. Yeah. So if you think about the function of what we do, it is, how do you take a brand promise, a company promise, and then make sure that the people who are the constituents, shareholders, employees, salespeople, the consumers, the customers, actually realize that promise, right? So it's all about how you communicate, and it's also about making sure that you are telling the truth, not trying to deliver, a smoke screen to what is actually not the truth. The beautiful thing about that is that in the last 15, 20 years, that has become almost impossible not impossible. Of course, it's possible to obfuscate, but the truth comes out much faster today. And because we start with what the facts are, as opposed to what the company wants the facts to be, we are much more effective. And I think the good PR firms are much more effective at actually making a difference for our clients if we start with the business in mind and the truth and the fact that it is very challenging to obfuscate the truth today because of social media, and that we're all our own media platforms.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hi, I'm Alex, the host of X Health Show. Meet the future of healthcare. Think X-Men, that's X Health. Actual superheroes behind programming living cells to cure cancer once and for all. Tech that detects preterm delivery in seconds, brain-computer interface, or apps that employ AI to match your disease with the best treatment. X Health Show brings to you visionaries who push the boundaries of healthcare from Switzerland, the heart of Europe and the most innovative country in the world. Let me introduce you to their startups. Head to X Health Show, meet the future of healthcare. Happy to greet you there.
It's really interesting because I was talking to someone else about this area, and they were saying that PR is harder to measure than marketing is, because marketing, you can build metrics, how many leads, how many sales. How do you make PR measurable that you can charge your clients what you charge them?
So I think that a few things. So marketing in general, if you think about marketing and advertising would be in marketing, but is the function of declaring yourself and then paying for the places that you will declare yourself in. So it is the collateral, it's the websites, it's the podcasts, it's the advertising, it's the sponsorships that you do, and the words that you use, and the people you associate with that you're paying those partnerships for, that people will see you in no matter what happens. No matter what happens. Public relations, media relations and influencer relations and public relations is the things you cannot pay for that you want the same result of. You want people like yourself to carry the message of the company wherever they are. But if you're not paying for it, you can't predict it, number one, right? You can't say, it's going to happen on Tuesday at around 9. You can't, because something might happen. We might enter, just think about the last oh my gosh, think about between our two countries, think about what's happened in the last 6 years. You cannot predict a thing. Yeah. So what you think might be planned for Tuesday at 9 actually gets bumped 2 weeks because it's just not that as important to that reporter. Yeah. So, or that influencer or that person, because life gets in the way, right?
Yeah.
So at the same time, the value of having someone like yourself carry a message that I'm not paying you to carry is 3, 4, 10x more important than the value of the message that you pay for, because it's somebody else volunteering, basically, even if it's their job, to say, use these eye drops, this is a good spoon, whatever it is, right? You can tell I have crap on my desk. So that's the job, right? To convince other people to carry your message without compensation.
Right.
So it's very hard to measure because it's very hard to predict. Can't predict it. When it will happen. You can say, I want to talk to Mark because he has this many, here's how we would evaluate. Mark has this many podcasts. He has this many listeners. He's focused on this audience, and I want to reach this audience. So it is going to be worth it for me to talk. This is not how I came to you, but I want to talk to Mark because, wow, he's going to be able to carry my message. And you'd agreed to have me on. You were like, oh, check her out, do the research, see if she is valuable to my audience or not. And you vetted it out. I didn't give you money to have me appear. Right. So it's more valuable. It's just more valuable because you're volunteering to, but of course there was work behind the scenes that put me in front of you. You did the work to validate all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So that's the function. How you measure is so challenging. So you measure on what are your goals, right? So who is the audience? Who influences that audience? And what would you pay for it? So many different companies measure very different ways. So some people measure on CPM, which is dumb. CPM? Don't bother. Cost per 1,000 on impressions. So you'd say, a newspaper has 1 million readers. Right. We got this much space. You would pay for it this much, kind of stuff. We prefer to measure it from identifying with the client who matters and just start knocking them off, right? And then it takes a long time. It takes a very, very long time. So, and then there's a general awareness you can do. And then also we measure against our competition. So we can measure mentions and profiles and positive, negative, neutral. So we can measure sentiment, and then we keep track of it all. On social media, it's much easier to measure because did it get posted or not? Did it get liked or not? Did it travel or not? as long as it was unpaid. And then there is work that we do that is sponsored, but in general, it's not advertising. It's sponsored where they have some say in what the content is.
Right.
It's very challenging to measure. Everyone's like, oh, why can't they just put my link in? Because they don't have to.
Yeah.
And today, in today's world, really how you measure is, did you get a person to click on the link and go to the website? Because really the front door of any company, any person, any entity is the website.
Right.
And our job is to get people to the website, frankly. And then the website can fall down in their conversion. And in fact, it does often, right? So it's really important for us to also understand the back end of making that conversion happen. Is the website set up for conversion, not just I saw it or not?
Yeah. Okay.
It's a very long answer. I'm sorry.
No. It's been fascinating. It's been really interesting. Okay, we're going to jump around a little bit and go back to your medieval history.
Yeah. Very useful.
Well, has it been useful?
It has. Well, first of all, I have to say one of my favorite parts of my degree was when I came to Oxford and was at Keble College first semester, and I got to study with Benedicta Ward, who is, awesome. So I went to college thinking I was going to be doctor like my father. And in my first trimester, so here it's 4 years, and I know there it's 3 in general. And it was in trimesters, so 10 weeks at a time. And I had to take chemistry, and I hated it. I was like, oh my God, I don't want to do this. So, but I was taking a class called, I had enrolled in this seminar, only 10 people in the class, which is very small for a U.S. College. And it was Chaucer's England. And I just, was hooked, line and sinker. And so without telling my parents, I was like, just kept taking medieval history classes. And then finally I had to convince my father. I had to tell my father that I declared my major. And I called him and I said, hey, Dad, I declared medieval history, not pre-med. He goes, thank God you're not going to be a doctor. Yeah, you could have told me that earlier. That would have been a lot less stress for me. So, I went to a liberal arts college, which is about rounding out the person and getting you as much sort of entry into as many different spheres as possible. It's a very different process here in the United States than it is in the UK. Like, you don't declare anything until you show up, kind of stuff. And in the end, this liberal, it was like, just to get a degree, learn how to learn is the concept of the Bachelor of Arts. So I learned how to learn, and I learned it through this topic that I really enjoyed. Spent a lot of time in England doing research, which is fun. And then the history department wanted me to go be a historian. And I was like, I don't think so. I'm not good at doing one thing. The music department actually wanted me to consider a music degree, as like, I can't practice for 8 hours a day. And so I just got a job. And when I was looking for work, I started thinking about what I was good at. And my friend Ramona said, you should go into PR. And I didn't know what PR was. So I went to the Career Center here at my college, Carleton College in Minnesota. And there was a book, What is PR? I was like, oh, I read it. I was like, oh, that looks good. So I pursued that, and I got an internship in Boston, which was in high-tech PR, which couldn't be farther away from medieval history, but it paid me the most. I mean, I was offered 4 internships. This one paid me double. I was like, I guess I'll take that one. And it turned out that I was pretty good at it, and I liked it. And I'm very fortunate that I've been in the same career with many different iterations since I started. And the reason that, coming back to your question, that medieval history degree is, there's 2 reasons now, but until a year and a half ago, there was one reason, is that the history degree, the act of being a historian allows you to discover, articulate, and then defend a point of view, which is what we do in PR every single day. Right. We figure out what it is, we write it down, and then we propagate it and defend it all the time. So it was very useful in terms of the process of what the historian does around a topic and what we do in PR around a topic as well. Now, in the last 18 months, I have to say, with the pandemic, my medieval history degree has been very useful because I did my thesis on pandemics. So finally, almost 30 years later, I have something to say about my degree that is relevant today. Which I've been gleefully saying since I've been very safe and I'm been, we locked down in my house and we didn't go outside and I didn't get sick and so there you go. What do you want to know about pandemics, Mark? So I can talk about that forever. Isn't that funny?
Oh, that's brilliant. That is brilliant. All right. So
threw you off there. Sorry.
Yeah, you have thrown me off. So what was your first role out of? So you said you were in high tech in
yeah.
So because you ended up at Sega and you spent some time at Sega as well. So just tell me, what was that a continuation within the tech arena?
Right. So I started my career in Boston in a high-tech PR firm called the Weber Group, which was one of the first high-tech, high-tech was just starting then. I think there were probably 200, 300 high-tech PR people in the country of the United States when I started. And so it was easy, or if you were smart and you can figure it out, it was easy to make a good name for yourself because the opportunity was just exploding, right? I never really had a deep affinity for object-oriented programming. I was good at talking about it. So then I was recruited. Then I decided I wanted to move to California. That's a long story. We don't have time for it. And the agency that recruited me there was a consumer tech agency. That was when PCs were just getting into homes. And so I moved from deep tech to more consumer tech. And there we launched, I was on, you probably are too young for this, but this company called the 3DO Company, which was going to upend the whole video game space. In the end, the PR killed that company, but it was really good. But I learned more about how not to do PR than I did about how to do it for the long haul in that. And then I was recruited to Sega from there because I'd had success in the video game space. So I was at Sega for about first I worked on the account, and then I was at the company for 5 years. And I ran I was the vice president of communications, so I ran public relations, investor, consumer, this thing called a website, and then all events. And then the world, basically the UK, the Japan, and the US and Canada was all in my purview. When Sega decided to launch the Dreamcast platform, I decided I should leave because we knew what was going to happen to the company before we launched the product. Because
this was all Mega Drive and sort of.
So Mega Drive was before the first, right? So Mega Drive was our Genesis here, and then the 32X, then the Saturn, and the last one was Dreamcast, which was in 1999. It was launched. When we decided to go forward with this platform, we knew that it would, the tie ratio, which is how many games you had to sell. This is so old. We didn't have online really. We'd had some, but it was not like today. Mm-hmm. You had to buy the cartridges or the CDs, right? Yeah. We had to sell like 4 times as many games as was normal in the United States to make the platform successful. Okay. We were not going to do that when Nintendo and Sony were coming in the market at the same time. So I left the company, went back actually to, now it was the Weber Shandwick, which is one of the largest. Shandwick started in the UK, Weber Group. I worked for Larry Weber, the Weber and Weber Group in Weber Shandwick, worked for them, started 2 companies for them, and then 9/11 happened, and then I left.
So it's the Weber company was Red Whistle Communications, was it?
Yeah. So, and once I was at Weber Shandwick in San Francisco, I started a consumer technology practice for them in San Francisco. And it was just not in San Francisco, Silicon Valley, the .com area, you really needed a different brand to go after these clients because of a long thing. That's another podcast. So they asked me to start a new company, which is called Red Whistle. Which I did. And it had a London office. So it was very large at the time as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now, I want to talk about your books, but
yeah,
come on to that first of all, because what I was fascinating about your books that you've written, it's very much about culture, millennials, building workforce. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily where your area of expertise had
Right.
started. So first of all, why did you choose to? I've read the story that you were impacted by millennials,
Yes.
and they kept on leaving your firm, and you didn't understand why, and then you did some research. But why crystallize that into a book? What was the one there?
So really, I almost did so when I started the company, I only hired people with 10 years of experience because I was tired of Gen Xers. Because Gen Xers in San Francisco, they weren't there. Gen X is the smallest generation that we have. There weren't enough of them, blah, blah, blah. Long story. And then when 2009 happened, I realized we were going to run out of people who had 10 years of experience because no one really got hired in PR in San Francisco between 2000 and 2004 or 5. So by 2008 or 9, I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to run out of people soon. And you always want to be bringing people in from the bottom, at the bottom of your eligibility, always, because that brings the fresh blood in and you can train and train up. So we said, okay. And I was known at the time at Weber Shandback, I had 700 people. Most of them were under 30. So, and people wanted me in my group, and I was like, oh, this won't be hard.
700 people were under your,
yeah. Well, Shandback had 650. At Weber, I had 700. And again, most of them were under 30. So I didn't think it was me a problem. So the company, my Double Forte hired, I think we hired 6 or 7 people within 8 or 9 weeks of each other, and they were all gone in 3 months. And we walked one and the rest left in 3 months. And that had never happened to me in my career. I was like, people like working for me. What are you doing? What is happening? And I called my friend and I said, Melania, oh my gosh, what the hell? She goes, Lee, they're terrible. Never hire them again. I'm like, how could you not hire? I mean, it's 80 million people in the United States. How can you not hire them? And so everything I didn't know what a millennial was at the time I started reading. It's all so negative. Today, it's still negative, even though millennials are 45. I mean, anyway, so negative. And I was like, screw that. I'm going to have to figure it out myself. At the same time, my clients are having the same problem that I was. And if you think about the art, what we do, communication solves business problems through talking, basically.
Yeah.
Because everything, again, like I said, everything's about a business problem. And so my clients are having the same problem. And they were like, Lee, I just don't know how to talk to these people. And so they asked me, how do I talk to them? So it was the function was the same. How do I talk to so they understand me? And so I just started sharing what I had learned in my research, and then we did a lot of trial and error, and it started working for them. And they just asked me they said, Lee, you should write a book on this, because really my books talk about how to articulate. It's the same thing, Mark. How do you articulate what you do, why you should do it, and then how do you move people from, okay, I got that, to actually wanting to do something for you that they don't have to do, right? Because really you don't have to do it. So it's culture, internal culture is the same function around purpose and communication and follow through that is true in public relations. I'm also a business owner. I'm now, 19 years in this country, at least 90% of companies don't make it past 3 years. 95% of companies don't make it past 5 years. So I think we're doing okay, So it was something that we applied in my own company, which is all about, what do we stand for? What are our behaviors? Because our behaviors speak for us. And that's really why culture is behavior, right? Culture is like, how do I treat you? What do we stand for? How do we make decisions? What are our values? And it's the same process that we use in communication. Like, okay, what do you stand for? What do you want your customers to know? Is it true? Like, are you organic? Or you just say you want to be organic. It's the same process, but with a lens towards people that you work with. So that is what my client. I'm like, no one's going to want to read that book. And actually, I was talking to a publisher about something else entirely, and we got interrupted by a young person who just came and made a big ruckus and made so disruptive. And then the woman left, and then the publisher I was talking, she just rolled her eyes. She goes, oh my God, these millennials. I'm like, I didn't know a little bit about them. what's going on? And she told me, and I said, well, have you told her that she shouldn't do that? Well, no, she should just know. They don't know. So I spent 15 minutes with her. I'm like, oh, here's what I learned the hard way. Here's my suggestion of what to do. And she said, I will publish that book. And I was like, well, what book are you talking about? I was like, a book. Because your book, I don't have a book. Yeah, you do. Look, Millennials, do that. So literally that's how it happened. And from that book, I wrote the second book, which is The Boomerang Principle, which is about, I think it's strategically important, particularly today, to say, yes, we're not going to hold everybody in our company for their whole careers, because millennials, Gen X, or Gen Zs, they think, well, one, they're all going to be working much longer than their parents did. Mm-hmm. And things are changing so fast. Can you imagine that someone would want to stay in a, particularly we call them white collar job, knowledge worker job, for their whole careers, and it would stay the same? It's not possible. Yeah. So if you say to people, we're going to help you get on your way, whatever what do you want to do? We're going to help you get there in the constructs of our company. When you're no longer interested in this, God bless you. I hope you come back. And then when they come back, they're much more valuable. In this country, when I published that book in 2017, more than 60% of companies in this country had written or informal policies never to hire people again. And so basically you're taking all these knowledge workers who you already thought were good off the table for recruiting, which is just dumb. So those are how my two books came about, and why I felt at the beginning, I didn't think I was credible. I was like, oh, I just run a PR firm. But in the end, I found out that it's all the same. And what we do for a living, which is identify, clarify, and propagate a point of view, is the same thing as building culture. And if you start with what is good and factual and keep working at it, because no one's ever perfect. If you just keep working at it and over-communicate, you achieve your goal.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So something not many people know about you is that you read Jayne Austen fan fiction.
Gosh, so much Jayne Austen fiction.
Is this fan fiction in that people have theories if something else happens?
Yes. So basically there's really two books so Jayne Austen, which my favorite book is Pride and Prejudice. My second favorite book is Persuasion. And which I realize is not medieval history, but still good. So fanfic. So when, so basically it's in the public domain, as you know. So fan fiction is when someone takes they choose a chapter, they choose what happened in the book, and they choose a different action. So do you know Pride and Prejudice? Probably, because everybody does. So Mr. Wickham didn't show up, or instead of saying this, they said that. And then they carry the story the other way. And there's a lot of it because it's a cult. I'm just going to tell you. There's a lot of it. And I know it's worldwide, but there are so many Americans who come to the UK and do the Jayne Austen tour.
Yeah.
Anyway, and some of it's really crap, frankly, and I don't read past the first 5 pages. And some of it's really good.
It's books. Oh, I thought it was like articles or.
No, it's books. It's stories, and some of them are like 10,000 words, and some of them are 100,000 words.
Wow!
And there are hundreds of these.
Oh, you've just blown my mind there.
I want you, after this, you'll go to Amazon and you'll type in Jayne Austen fan fiction, and your mind will go boop. So only read the stories that have 5 stars or above. Everything else is crap.
Okay. All right.
So I work, I talk all day long. Can you tell? I read all day long. Running a business is hard. It is lonely, as you know. And at the end of the day, I do not actually want to think anymore. So for me, Jayne Austen fan fiction, one, I've read those 2 books a million times. I know them inside and out. So the Jayne Austen fan fiction is a way to have something new, but in familiar, and it doesn't tax my brain, and it's very entertaining as long as it's well written. And that's what I do.
Amazing. So you said earlier on in this conversation that you weren't a natural entrepreneur or natural business owner, but now you don't think you could ever be employed again. So why don't you think you were a natural entrepreneur? I know it was circumstance that brought you into that world, but why don't you think you were a natural entrepreneur?
Yeah.
Why do you think now you couldn't be employed?
Well, I think I probably said, I mean, I didn't want to start my own company because I'm relatively risk averse. When I have a family, I'm the breadwinner. My mother was sick. I was like, oh, it's a lot of pressure, right? And when, and to think, leading a team for other people was enough pressure as it was. What I didn't realize was when you're the entrepreneur, you get to make the rules. So the things that I really grated against, particularly at my last company, was I didn't get to choose who I worked for. We had, because it was publicly traded, because we just had to hit our number. Really, anybody who came across the transom, we had to say yes to unless there was a conflict. And there are a lot of I mean, can I swear on this show?
Yeah.
There are a lot of assholes in business. And I don't want to work for them, right? Because they compromise you every single time.
Yeah.
And you do all this work and then it falls apart and then it's your fault because they're the asshole. And I was tired of it. And remember, this was .com land, right? So this is just like boom, boom, boom. So what I didn't realize as an entrepreneur, you get to decide who you work for and you get to decide what the rules are and you get to decide how you're going to behave. So probably in the end, it was natural because I was excited to be able to do my own thing. I just was risk averse because I have a family to provide for. And I started the company with 2 quarters and a nickel. I mean, I didn't take any debt. I didn't take, I was like, all right, I'm just going to start working. And it really, it was a means to an end, not a goal. Over time, it's become the goal, I guess. And we found that we work for really big companies. We punch so far above our weight in terms of the companies and the brands we work for, given our size, we're 22 people. And those companies value what our rules, basically. So I fired 4 or 5 clients in our history because they became assholes. And by definition, what that meant is that they lied to us. And then I could never have done that before. So that's what I meant by that.
Right.
Because it'd be easier not to have to make payroll, frankly. It'd be a lot easier.
Yes. What's the role of fact checking that has come in sort of post-Trump and sort of now we're every article, let's just say on BBC, because I'm in the UK, every major event that happens now that's commented on the BBC has an article saying, is this fact check this speech, fact check this action? What do you think of the role of fact checking in sort of media?
Well, I think what people don't know is that fact checking used to be part of the process. Reporters, producers on television, radio, online, and print all had fact checkers on their staffs.
Right.
And an article would not make it unless someone called and verified, is this product available at this store? Is it this, did this person actually go to that university? Did they have this degree? And then because media's changed so much and the cost has gone inverted to the revenue, the first people to go were the fact checkers. So people like myself or other people could get lies in, this is the best. I don't represent this company. These are the best eye drops in the world. And actually, they kill your. They don't actually. They're good, but they're not. Other ones are. But you could just say it, right? And that really, over 10 years, because it's really 12, 14 years ago that the fact checkers started getting killed out of editorial staffs. There are very few that have them today. That what you read may or may not be true. And at the same time, reporters, there are less of them. They have more jobs. As a social, they have a lot of them have to do their own video, their own audio, their own social media, their own art, blah blah blah. They have tons to do, and there are fewer of them. So the evolution, it looks new, right? Oh, the fact checkers, it looks new. It's not new. It's just that it was missing for so long, and then nefarious people took advantage of that fact to spread falsehoods. So I would say fact checkers are our friends. Because in the end, a falsehood does harm.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about the little like, oh, you're good looking. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about those people are terrible or no, in our country, no, Russia's not doing anything terrible. They're not interfering with our elections. When it is obvious. I mean, it's not, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what happened in 2 elections ago. Yeah. So, fact checkers are our friends, and we should be. I would say the other piece of that is that cable news. So in your country, is that ITV?
Yeah. So yeah.
So in our country, the news was over the air, and if you had an FTC, Federal Trade Commission license for the news, you were required to give both sides of a issue. When cable news happened, so that's CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, anything that you don't get over the air, they didn't have to do that because people were paying for it because there was no FTC requirement. For instance, Fox News in this country is actually, the news is not registered as a news organization. It's registered as an entertainment organization, and they can do that because it is on cable.
Wow.
And because it's on cable, and they've set literally, if you go to their registration, it's an entertainment organization.
Right.
If they were a news organization, and because they do have OTA over the air in almost every with different channels, it's very complicated here. They would have to have this. They would be able to be sued every single day for not having the news that both sides, right? But because they registered as an entertainment situation and people subscribe and pay for the service, and there's lots of, and the same is true on the left, you can do both ways. Because people now can choose their news and don't just have 4 or 5 options that are sent to them, like BBC 1, 2, 3, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
That also allowed the propagation of falsehoods because you didn't have the rules that made both sides, and because they were being subscribed to. Obviously, you had, just like the History Channel, they talk about history, or HBO, entertainment. And then, and people don't have, because of the way news is delivered today, you don't know if it's a news organization or not, a traditional news organization or not.
Yeah.
So having fact checkers around things that matter to you personally, to your community, in your community or your nation or in the world, it's really important because we're all connected. And bad water in one place is going to be bad water in another place soon. Or bad air in one place is going to be over our air, or our bad air is going to get somewhere else, right? Or just to use,
I didn't realize that was how Fox and other people got away with not having both sides of the story.
Yeah. I don't know that you have as many channels as we do.
So we kind of have, we do. Our satellite has like 600
gajillion. Yeah, right.
Probably of them, there's probably 50 that are news channels, 60 that are news channels, but that could be anything. In our sort of domestic, so sort of BBC, ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5, and sort of Sky News as well.
Yep.
So they kind of sort of all think of themselves as news channels. They sort of try and have a balanced viewpoint on everything. The BBC are well known for their sort of independence, but
I say BBC. BBC is probably the 5th largest news channel in the United States.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
And when BBC does something wrong, the world knows.
Yeah.
The world. I mean, first of all, the news ecosystem in the UK is quite vicious.
Yeah.
Most definitely. But also held to a higher, when you're real versus tabloid in the UK, those organizations are held to the highest standard in the world. Yeah. So when one of them does something wrong, the world finds out.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So I think the other interesting thing about the whole conversation around this is that we've all become our own news channels. We've all become our own media platforms. Yeah. So with that is a lot of freedom, but there's also a lot of responsibility, right? So if we say something, our opinion versus this is true, two different things, right? And I think that what kids are learning, and I'm sure it's true for you guys as well, but elementary school, so is let's see, I don't know what you call it there, but K through 6, so through 13 years old. Okay. They're actually being taught as young as 10 how to discern what is opinion versus what's factual in the schoolroom. So I have a lot of hope that in about 10 years, we'll all be better educated on this. But it is our responsibility as carriers. I mean, just sort of like you did your research. You didn't just say, oh, sure, she looks good. You take it seriously who you have on your show because it represents who you are. Yeah. So we all have a responsibility on that too. If we're going to have a media platform, and that's, when people go rogue on Twitter and then they want to say the opposite thing the next day. And I would just say, particularly for your footballers, we talked about this earlier, they have tremendous, this generation of footballers that you have such tremendous, they're taking tremendous role in your society, not just in the social issues that they are bringing forward, but also in the calling out of crap on platforms by people who should know better. So I think we're all, it's a grand experiment that I really believe will resolve well, but we have to live through us figuring it out beforehand.
Yeah, and those sorts of media relations that it's quite funny because I would imagine media relations probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago would have been just talking to the TV as footballers. So to give an example of footballers, now they have to deal with social media, the intrusion.
Oh, well, it's same for companies too, right? So it used to be, all right, I like this soup, I'm just going to buy this soup. Well, with social media and really with the internet, not just social media, but with the ability to, we have the perception that we have some total of world knowledge at our fingertips. It's not true, but we have the perception that it's true, right? And we start looking like, I care that, I can decide what I care about. I care that everything I wear is white. All right. Then I only want to wear white clothes. And then I look behind it, I'm like, that's actually not a white cloth. That's actually not white. What are you talking about? That's actually dyed. I don't want to wear dye. And as people have become more aware of what they put in their bodies, of the fact that their dollar advances somebody else's agenda, companies now really don't, and people, so I'd say footballers, the same thing is true for our footballers here. They have a little different kind of, your footballers are much more well-known than our footballers are in the world. When I say football here, I mean NFL, not soccer. But people want to know. People want to know what you stand for. People want to know that you're not going to, I'll give an example here that's there are companies that put money in, support the NRA. The NRA is the gun lobby here in the United States. So if you decided that you don't want to, if you want to curtail the propagation of AK-47s in the United States, then you don't give money to the NRA because that's what they do. So if a company supports the NRA, then people don't want their dollar to go to the company that then goes to the NRA. And I'm just giving you that example because it's the best one to give you. There are lots of others. Chocolate's another one. Coffee's another one. So now companies don't have a choice. And it's also because of the Freedom of Information Act here, we can figure it out, right? You can know where all the money went. So people are becoming along with this internet, along with being able to be a media platform, people are becoming more responsible, and that's only increased, right? It's only going to get larger. That they want to support the companies that support their causes.
Yeah.
So that's never that horse has left the barn. It's never going back in. And the same is true for people, right? So I'll use Marcus Rashford as the example. He didn't get that. One, he was so instrumental in feeding children in the UK in 2020, and probably now too. I don't really know, and put him in a totally different realm, and people didn't like it. He was like, he's a footballer. Well, he's also a human and who was hungry as a child. And he used his platform. Some people think it was bad. Some people think it was good. I would say it was good. People were fed. And now he doesn't have a choice. And now he doesn't have a choice to go back in, right?
Yeah.
Right. And now everything else, right? You don't have a choice to go back in once you make that thing.
Yeah.
And I would say with the recent Euros, I told you earlier, I'm a huge fan of Premier League and the England team. It's been distressing. And also encouraging to watch what's happened in the online as a result of the loss at the end, at the final. But more people were supportive in the end than were not. So we all have a role. And I can't remember, but we don't have a choice now, really. You don't have people are going to ask you. If you want to work with people, they're going to ask you, which means, and this is why our function, articulating, deciding on, articulating, and then propagating or sharing a company message, a product message is more important today than ever, that it be lined up with what the consumer or the customer or whoever user wants, because they can figure it out. If you say, we don't support the NRA, and then you send millions of dollars, well, expect a backlash. Expect it to hurt you because you're telling a falsehood. And so actually, with the internet, public relations used to be at the bottom level of the food chain. It was always like the crumbs, like, okay, well, we're going to cut the budget, cut PR first. Now, PR is the last thing that gets cut in general when you have to, shrink your budget, because the influence it has, it goes everywhere. It's your employees, it's your stakeholders, it's your customers, it's your users, it's other people who care about the topics, and they're going to call you out, right? Yeah. It just takes a lot of work. So again, like I said, I have a lot of hope and trust that in about 5 to 10 years, we will be in a better information space than we are today, because of learning as basically a world, because bad actors can act bad and have acted bad. Here's again, medieval history helps. There's always been bad actors, right? We can suss them out faster than we ever could.
Yeah. Well, that's been absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much for your viewpoint on that. I'm coming to the end of the interview. I asked the same 6 questions to all of my guests. They're quick-fire questions. They don't need quick-fire answers. So let's go with this. First one is, what's the best decision that you made?
To start my own company.
Awesome. What's the best piece of advice you were given?
You decide your own success.
You decide your own success. What do you mean by that?
So some people would say, Lee, you used to have 700 people, 650 people. You used to have this big salary, blah, blah, blah. Why did 22 people, you've gone down in the world? And I would say, no. My success is I put my success on many things. One is, am I working with people who I like to work with? Am I providing for my family in a way that I want to, that is comfortable and provides for their future? Do I get to sleep at night because I'm living with myself? and I'm not unhappy with who we're working for or what we were asked to do, or what I do with my time. And I have enough time to do the other things that I have either always loved to do or have learned to love to do. So those are the 4 metrics I use for my success. 3 of them I could not have used in either of my last 2 jobs. So the outward, CEO, or, you run 700 people, you make this many hundreds of thousands of dollars, blah, 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 blah. It looks great, but it doesn't mean that it is great for that person. So when, there was a time early on, I was like, oh my God, I gave up all this. I had to find payroll, And someone, basically my husband, who is, he used to be a chef, and I have my second son has disabilities, and basically he's been his caseworker for the last 20 years. Works at home, stay-at-home dad, blah, blah, blah. Sort of didn't actually touch me, but are you kidding? Look, you get to wake up when you want to wake up. You get to work for you want to work for. We're very comfortable. You're not bitching and moaning about who you're working for, and you get to spend time with your kids. Shut the front door. You're successful. And so he really helped me understand that if I decide what my success metrics are, then I don't really care what other people say.
I think that's awesome. Who's the person that's helped you most in your career?
Oh my gosh, just one.
Shout outs if you want.
I'd say Mary Jean Lozier, who was my boss at the Weber Group. I've learned a lot from her. I learned a lot from her about how to. I act fast, sometimes too fast, and I've learned from her how to tilt my head and say more about that before I give an answer. My mother, who was, she was born in 1938, and she was sort of traditional house mom. And then when I was in, I don't know what that is, their 7th grade, she said, you know what, I don't want to be a house mom anymore. She went back to school. She got her MBA. She had her own career. Then she sort of woke up and goes, you know what, I don't have to work. I'm going to do good works now. And she was the person who really showed me how to, what do I believe in and how do I want to live that out?
That's amazing. Do you have any regrets?
Probably. I mean, I think about the times in my career where I'm just cringeworthy. I'm like, oh God, it's so terrible. For instance, in I don't guess that was 1998. I regret that I didn't plug my computer in before Tom Kalinske went on stage because it didn't work. I mean, there are a lot of regrets, but I don't have really life regrets at all.
Awesome. What are you most proud of?
I'm proud that, I think for my life, I'm proud that my kids have opportunity, that, and I told you that I have a son who will never be independent, but we've been able to create a life for him that will be very fulfilling. And I'm proud that, and professionally, I'm proud that people want to work with me and want to work with my company, and stick around for a long time. So we keep clients for probably twice as long as most agencies do, and we keep people for 3 times as long as most agencies do. And I'm proud of that because we're so small that there's lots of other competition around. Yeah. They don't have to stay, and they don't have to hire us, and they do. That's good.
What does legacy mean to you?
Legacy is something that you've left the world better than when you came into it. You found something that was unsatisfactory and made it satisfactory. And that when you're gone, I think about this in terms of when you're gone, people think of you fondly. But in my book, The Boomerang Principle, I talk about legacy as being, in a resume, like a professional resume, you can choose at any time just to take something off. You don't have to say what you did. But for me, how I measure our legacy at Double Forte is, what I really care about the most is that when people leave us, they don't drop us from their resume. Right. Because it is something that they're proud of and that they learn something with us. And as long as everyone who's been through our company. So we're 19, I think, it's not that, maybe 200 people, not very many, but I'm still connected to all of them except two. And we're all connected, and they all, every year, something happens good from everybody. Either we're doing something for them or they're doing something for us, even if we're not paying them. That's legacy to me.
That's awesome. And lastly, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
I am so easy to find. So Lee Caraher, LeeCarahher. So on Twitter, I'm at Lee Caraher. At Double Forte is the company, double-forte.com. My books are at LeeCaraher.com. Facebook is LeeCaraher1.com. LinkedIn is Lee Caraher. It's Lee Caraher. It's very easy to find.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been absolutely fascinating speaking to you. Thanks a lot.
Mark, thank you for letting me have long answers. I really appreciate it.
It's all right. Okay, thanks a lot. Cheers.